gained success. So like you said, there has always been entrepreneurship. There has always been saving. There has always been creative entrepreneurs in these communities. But as soon as the resentment grew, there would be these hostile acts of terrorism. And this is where the law never stepped in to protect Black homeowners and Black property owners. And this happened in the North. I mean, Jesse Binga is a Black banker in my book that I focus on, very successful real estate broker, successful Black banker. His house was bombed 10 times and he kept moving back. Dr. Austin Sweet, in Chicago, was armed to protect his home, and rioters came with Molotov cocktails and threw him into his house, and that was a family that lived in these houses. And so if you were going to buy a home to invest, you didn't just have to worry about getting enough money for the mortgage. You also had to worry about the white mob that was going to come. So we talk about racial riots now. The only racial riots in America, and that weren't called racial riots, were white riots on Black properties. And then, of course, the lynch mobs that also kind of put that terrorism in. And so a lot of Black business leaders and Black leaders in general operated under a real threat of bodily harm. And I don't think we can underestimate what that does to a business, to its business's customers. If you feel like if you can't get people to walk in your door and have physical safety, if you can't put your deposits in a white-owned bank. Maggie Walker talks about this. She's the first woman of any race to own a bank. She's the first Black banker in the state of Virginia. And she would put her deposits in a white bank because you have to have some transactions. And sometimes that white banker wouldn't let her withdraw when she needed to. So there was these acts of coercion and violence where the law didn't protect, and it really inhibited that sort of trust in the businesses.
And you even think about Ida B. Wells, who was inspired to, and I say inspired in a way that motivated to go out and talk about lynchings after her friends who had a grocery store that white people would come to because it was so good. The white grocer, being angry, came in, tried to kill him. Mm-hmm. He shot one of them, and then they lynched. Mm-hmm. And there was no recourse. No one went to jail. And that seems to be the story on the heels as we fast forward to last summer and the summer of Freddie Gray and the summer of Mike Brown. All they were concerned about is Black people burning down a CVS or Black people looting their own communities. They care about property. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They want to come in and law and order that. Mm-hmm. But all of these communities that were decimated, they never did. So they don't care about property. They only care about white property.
That's right. And if you look at the Ferguson report in Ferguson, Missouri, after the Michael Brown shooting, you look at the way that police department was funded by civil forfeitures, illegal, outside of the law, civil forfeitures, the tickets and the way that that whole like exploitative structure, and so you say, look, you've been looting these communities for years, and we don't call it looting, we just call it, civil fines. But it has the same effect. And I think you look at the way that, the New Deal property allocations work. I mean, that was really there was benefits to, they created an all white suburb at the expense of that Black inner city red line zone. And there was profits gained off of the backs of exploitation. Those patents that Black patent owners did not get went to the white person who stole the patent. The property that, was where the owner was lynched was handed over to white men. And that is property that has remained. And, you look at even Native American property dispossession that, the white men would just take the property from these tribes, and that money stays in that community. It is not, just that person's theft. It goes in, it's like a legacy built on that initial theft. And so that's where I think the imperative of justice and reparations and redress comes from.
We're talking with, of course, Mehrsa Baradaran. She is the author of Color of Money, and this should be a must-read book in any home, anybody that's here right now, please go out and get this book because it is absolutely amazing. I want to get back to the New Deal for a second, because there, again, this notion that America was made great upon this wonderful FDR program that created this wonderful middle class. That but clause, just like the end of slavery but clause, but for incarceration. Oh, now we get to have slavery again. This New Deal excluded folk that worked in the fields and people that did domestic work, which were the two jobs that Black people were relegated to for 30 years until the 1970s. Black people could not participate in this wonderful program that built a middle class in this country. And we talk about a wealth gap that will take 228 years to close. How big a deal was that New Deal in hurting our progress?
It was a huge deal because it wasn't just the, leaving out domestic workers and farm workers, which was purposeful. It was, if you think about who passed the New Deal, yes, it was FDR, but it was a Southern Democrat Senate that didn't allow a single anti-lynching bill to get passed until Cory Booker just recently passed one. So the Southern Bloc was the stronghold against any civil rights. And those are the guys who passed the New Deal. And so they excluded certain workers. They allowed white unions to exclude Black workers. And they also did not allow this massive $1 trillion mortgage guarantees to go to Black communities. And so that really cements the racial wealth gap into this century. And so it's not just about, look, it's not, when we talk about racial wealth gap, it's not about the assets someone has on their balance sheet. It's also about what neighborhood they were able to kind of gain equity in, their grandparents or their parents, were their parks, were their schools that are funded by property taxes. And then the environmental hazards. Okay, so where do you put the bus depot and the lead paint that you don't remedy, the Flint water crisis? That is not accidental either, because those were in the communities that didn't have that sort of, white suburban wealth that was financed by the New Deal government programs. And so you have environmental hazards being primarily suffered by, the Black community that was left. You have then highways, in the 60s, 50s, and 60s run through the center of those neighborhoods that had been built, even despite, right? So all of the exclusion, people had still had built neighborhoods. And then you get that sort of, urban renewal highways that decimated the neighborhoods again. And just this cycle of, businesses leaving the white home with the white homeowners, and really exploitative lenders coming back in. So payday lending, for example, isn't a phenomenon until the 1980s, when banks have just completely left the inner cities and the check cashers and the payday lenders come in. So if you look at the maps of payday lenders, it's where the installment lenders were. This is where the red line communities had been. Those maps have hardly changed. If you look at where George Floyd was murdered, I actually did this analysis. As you look at where George Floyd was murdered, and that neighborhood was a red line neighborhood. It is the highest, it's a banking desert, it's a food desert, it has the most payday lenders in the area. It is an area that is over-policed and under-resourced. It is an area where the schools are, not given the funds. And so you look at this horrific video, and that's the tip of the iceberg. That is the thing that rightfully gets the world out on the streets saying enough. But if you look at the whole iceberg, this is a system of exploitation. And the people not being murdered have been over-policed and ignored and subjected to all sorts of, environmental hazards and police violence and the trauma of all of that's compounded over time. That I think it's really important to focus on these things. But I think police brutality is just one part of a way bigger historic problem.
We're here Juneteenth at this amazing conference with Marissa Baradaran, the author of Color of Money. And again, I want to reiterate that this is about remembering, just as much as it's a celebration of the end of slavery. It's to remember that we've always been. And this book, again, lays it out factually, historically, gives us the nuggets that we need to verify that, yes, we are in this condition for a reason that is usually government sanctioned, definitely government ignored. If not sanctioned, then they've ignored some things. But also there's a period of hope in the book that I feel like we can hook into to pull us forward to today as we celebrate Juneteenth. There's and it's ironic, I think, 1863 to 1865, right? You fast forward 100 years, you talk about Martin Luther King, who many of us know he was killed, not just because he was against Vietnam, but because he was talking about poor people and having a movement in this country to lift folk up out of poverty. Ooh, wait a minute. that 2 year period where JFK was still alive, talk about that and what was happening and how we can use that as maybe a blueprint for what can happen now.
Yes, that's so important. And I think this is, when Reagan made Martin Luther King a national holiday, I think, and uses the one sentence totally out of context from his speech to say, look, it's done. Civil rights is done. That was a speech that Reagan used to make Martin Luther King a national holiday. He says, look, we fixed it. We fixed civil rights. And Martin Luther King, if you look at the entirety of the speech, first of all, and the entirety of his legacy, he talks about my dreams turned into a nightmare a year later. He it was barely just starting. Because if you think about the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, that gave no new rights to the Black community that they had not earned themselves in the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. The problem was that those rights were not honored. And so what the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act do is just say, we're serious this time. It wasn't that serious, but still that the federal government was going to actually enforce them this time, unlike the last time. And so every principle of the civil rights movement, including Lyndon Johnson, who was not, a hero, who did not invite Martin Luther King into the White House to sign the Civil Rights Act, he even realized that they had many, many steps to go in order to achieve justice. He says, Johnson says, you can't take a man who's been behind by 300 years and say, okay, go, you're on equal footing. But really, the entire world shifted between 1965 and 1968. So Roger Wilkins of NAACP says,
Roy Wilkins.
Yeah, I knew it was wrong. Roy Wilkins of the NAACP says in 1966, he says, you could not pass the Emancipation Proclamation in the environment in that Congress in 1966. Rabidly angry was that backlash. And so, you look at who was murdered, and Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Bobby Kennedy, and the Chicago, movements, against the Democratic, the Hubert Humphrey and all of the Black Panthers murdered by the FBI in their homes, and I think moving into Nixon, it's like everything just shifted backwards. And all of a sudden you have white people saying, well, where are my rights? Why, now this is reverse discrimination and busing is taking away my constitutional rights. And it's really eye-opening to look at the original sort of writings of that era and realize how whitewashed that history became over time, and how we tell the story of civil rights. Not all of us, but America writ large, if you look at the official documents, tell the story of civil rights as though it fixed a thing and it was just starting. And so I think exactly as you said is understanding that helps us perhaps be a little bit skeptical, not completely skeptical. Understand that change is possible and you can get majorities on board to demand justice, but you always have to be watching out for that backlash that will turn your movement against you. And so I think we're at a different place now than we were 5 years ago. If you learn the lessons of history, it is to just be a little bit wary of just celebrating before we're done. And I think to be done, and this, like you said, the 228 years of closing the racial wealth gap, if we don't do anything, we won't close it in 200 years. But we could actually fix it in much less time than 220 years. But if we do nothing, time isn't going to fix it by itself.
Which is why One Transaction, One United's call for everyone to hashtag One Transaction is super important, because it requires each of us to do something. And it's not enough for each of us to do something. As today is Juneteenth, I need us to not celebrate, because this is not the end of anything. This is the beginning, or should be the propelling of something, so that we don't go backwards and we don't have that wealth gap end up being 250 years, 300 years. We can definitely shorten it. I think we can do it in 5 years if we all make a commitment, and talk about that for a little bit, because it's interesting how you could predict Trump was going to win based on what had happened in the past.
I was shocked. No, I don't want to give myself credit. I was shocked.
I actually predicted he could win too, because you had a Black president for 8 years, and everyone said post-racial, and I was like, Have you been in America?
Mhm.
Now, fast forward, people, critical race theory. We don't want we don't want to feel bad about being white. So let's ban any talk about actual history. You just told us in the 60s, same thing happened. Heading into Nixon, same thing happened. So now we have Joe Biden as president. That's great. We have a Juneteenth holiday. That's great. But we got a whole lot of angry so-called white people because there's no such thing as whiteness. I'm going to say that on this thing right here. I'm going to say it. It's a made-up construct to continue to do the things you've been writing about in your book and get away with it. So now, Mersa, what do we do moving forward? Okay, we have, fortunately, we have the Congress, we have the Senate, we have the House, we have the president, right? We have people who are motivated, activated in them streets out there doing all sorts of things. We have more millionaires in the Black community, more billionaires than we've ever had. We have millions and millionaires and billionaires who are forgiving debt and who actually care about Black people. They're not just like, Republicans buy sneakers too. They're actually out there doing some things. Do you think we have a ripe ground to close that wealth gap really quickly? And if so, what do we need to do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a ripe ground. I think it takes policy. I think it takes relentless political pressure. The Black Lives Matter movement, I think in my lifetime, was one of the most inspiring movements I have seen that really felt like it's making change. And that's why people are scared. I mean, this critical race theory stuff, this anti-1619, I mean, this is a good sign, I think, that, and at least, you even see that the white supremacists at least acknowledging, well, Republicans were the ones that ended slavery. You actually have, this weird backlash that actually even acknowledges that some of this stuff was horrific. So I think I think that keeping that forward motion on that Black Lives Matter movement and the ways that movement sort of brought in a bunch of people together. I think building cross racial coalitions like Martin Luther King tried to do for Black justice is really important. And so this is where I kind of talk to my fellow immigrant brown people is, look, we were immigrants CC'd in as Martin Luther King fought for civil rights. They said, inclusive. No, none of us immigrants from, whatever shithole countries would be here if Martin Luther King hadn't included us in that drive for civil rights. Nicole Hannah-Jones was right in her essay that Black communities have pushed for everyone else's civil rights. And I think this is what I loved about the Black Lives Matter movement is seeing not just that it was a Black-led movement, but that there were other people also joining. And I think that is really important just politically in a majoritarian democracy for everyone to say, I do not want to live in a country where Black men are killed like that in front of my eyes. I do not want to live in a country that has a racial wealth gap where some schools are under-resourced and other schools aren't. I don't want to live in a country where my kid gets a better resource school than some other kid. That money should be equal. And I think that movement is essential. I think we can absolutely change it. I think it takes some federal acknowledgement of what's gone wrong. This week, the White House Economic Council, led by Cecilia Rouse, who's the first Black, I think, head of the Economic Council, wrote about exclusionary zoning as part of the racial wealth gap. I think there is a lot of room for optimism here in the Biden administration. They're at least acknowledging. I mean, Biden called Tulsa a massacre. He, has used the words a racial wealth gap and has committed his administration to, cross agencies fix it. Now, I think it's right to be skeptical. I think that is the history is not, in favor of real movement happening. But I think the voters really sent that message. If you look at what delivered, the White House to Joe Biden, I think he has to understand that the mandate came from, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Detroit. Those were the states that delivered him the vote, as has always been the sort of, swing vote in the Democratic Party. And so I think, just from a political standpoint, I think we need to make those moves. And I think the way to do it is just a cross-government, cross society movement, and an unrelenting one, not taking just, window dressing to really get at structural reform as previous civil rights leaders had demanded as well.
And as you mentioned, Johnson didn't even welcome Martin Luther King in. He was forced to do something. And, a lot of us believe, well, we elected them. They're our friends now. They're going to do everything. Well, what about this and what about that? People have to be made to do something. Even Obama said, hey, I'm president of the United States. If you want me to do something, you have to make me. And I think a lot of us have missed that point. The election is just step maybe 7 on a whole 10-step plan. We elected you. Now we got to hold you accountable. We got to be fierce and vigilant and make sure that you do all of the things or else, and so I appreciate that. Color of Money is the name of the book. As I mentioned, we're going to welcome in some questions from the folk who have signed up. And thank you guys for joining us on this Juneteenth. This is the perfect way to spend this holiday in building and growing, building yourself and your community. This is the perfect way to spend Juneteenth and honor those people in Galveston who worked for 2 extra years toiling in a field after they were already free. All right, let's go to, we're not going to give out names. There's a question about mitigating the consequences of this racist system. How can we save if we're not earning enough to save? And I'm going back to the people who were sharecropping, who clearly were not earning enough to save. What are your thoughts on that, Mercy?
Yeah, I think saving is always a good idea, but no one's ever become rich by saving their money in America. I mean, look, the way that the middle class has built wealth is through credit, government credit. And this is where One Bank or One United and what you're doing. I mean, we save. Banks have power and give them power to lend on mortgages in homes, and those mortgages have to increase in value. So I think that's sort of how wealth is created. I think this idea that people just need to save more money, whatever. Look, the data is pretty clear on this. The lower, people make rational decisions. The less income you have, the better you are at managing your income. All of us make mistakes, make financial mistakes, but for some people, those financial mistakes can lead to disaster. And so those are problems that are structural. If we're not making enough, a lot of Americans aren't making enough to save money. It's not that they're not saving money, it's that there isn't anything left at the end of the month to save because they have to meet these needs. And so I think it is this idea that, just save more money is really like blaming the victim here, where there aren't enough wages. And I think this is really changing. If you listen closely to the debates right now about unemployment, where these businesses are complaining that if we give unemployment checks, which maintain people at a poverty level, if we give unemployment checks, then people won't work. The tacit acknowledgement here is that the threat of poverty and starvation is what we need to get people to work. Now, that is something that has been a recognized policy in American history, especially when it comes to Black and Brown communities. You look at that unemployment rate, the way that we are comfortable with a 10, 11% Black unemployment rate, where if that was applied across the board, that would be a depression. Okay, so those kinds of things, and just say, if we give people the bare minimum of survival, they won't work. Well, think about how much in wages we need to pay to give people dignity and a living wage, and the ability to have savings and a home and all the stuff that we tell people is a good thing to have. We need to cancel student debt. We need to give housing grants. We need to look, there's like a whole generational and then a whole racial thing happening with student debt for young Black students right now who carry more of that debt than anyone else. And these are students who are doing what we told them to do. They're going to the best colleges, or going to historically Black universities, and then we're leaving them with debt. And so I think these are really important interventions that need to be done. And then the savings will come. It's not, I just fundamentally think it is wrong to blame the racial wealth gap on anyone's personal decisions, except if we're talking about, policymakers, like Nixon's decisions, right?
And we should have a basic income.
Yes.
Also, I just wanted to throw that in there. Another question. The person says, I don't know if it's a byproduct of brainwashing we've been subjected to, but how do we dispel this mistrust that we have of one another in the Black community with regard to banking with a quote black bank.
Mm-hmm.
I have thoughts. You go
if,
first.
yeah, you know, I mean, I think this is something that has been pervasive in history, and I think I go through kind of some of the dialogues in this book. I mean, W.E.B. Du Bois talked about this, Carter G. Woodson talked about this, Martin Luther King talked about this, and it is both relevant because, you know, you have the Freedmen's Bank, and so there's this distrust of banking in general that has been passed down, a very rational distrust, I would say, because a lot of people did have their money stolen by white banks, and then the distrust of black banks. I think part of it is just distrust of banking in general, and part of it is you know, maybe a thing about feeling like that sort of internalized racism of we think that everything in that white community is better. I think a lot of communities experience this, and something that we all need to work on.
Yeah, and I think, you know, even immigrant communities are, you know, that stuff is piped out. I'm reading a book called Propaganda, Ed Bernays, and he talks about the power of the media, the power of movies and the written word as far as delivering messages. Hitler was great at using that. He had a filmmaker, you know, during his tenure, because messaging is important. I don't know what it would look like for 400 years to be told that you're less than, you're inferior, your brain is smaller, you're cannibals, you come from nothing, and then be able to generation after generation after generation after generation, because there were a lot of generations during that 400-year period.
Yep.
So that's number one. The fact that there's a black bank right now that has nearly $1 billion in assets speaks volumes about how, you know, how well we've overcome a lot of the brainwashing, but it's still there. And we have to work every day to do that, coupled with understanding if that largest black-owned bank only has $1 billion or less than $1 billion, the largest Hispanic-owned bank has $20 billion, the largest Asian-owned bank has $30 billion, and let's not even talk about the largest white-owned bank, right?
Fucking trillions, several trillions.
You're operating at so much less to deliver equal. How? So we have to work twice as hard to make sure that the largest black-owned bank has enough assets to be able to operate at the level. We can't bitch and complain about why, oh, they don't have this, they don't have that, they don't have this, when they are operating at 20 to 30, 100 times less than the bank that, you know, so it's this and that.
Look, I mean, Jeff Bezos owns $130 billion in personal assets and didn't pay a lick of federal taxation, right? So I actually think it's time to put pressure on these white serving institutions and really just, I mean, to demand taxes and wealth from those. I mean, JP Morgan, $1 billion they paid in fines for racial discrimination. So those, that
Wells
is
Fargo
money
too. Wells Fargo, don't please.
Wells Fargo. I mean, the money that was extracted out of the black community, that 53%, those the banks that got saved got 100 cents on the dollar. Black communities lost 53% of their wealth. None of it has come back into those communities. And so it is to say, well, it's their fault, you should save more money, is just incredibly insulting. And it's insulting to all of us who saw it happen. It's like you want us to believe something that we did not see with our own eyes, which is that AIG was, you know, failed and was nationalized by the federal government. Okay. And now we're saying, oh, capitalism, like that's not capitalism. We nationalized the bank and then gave their shareholders 100 cents on the dollar. And and One United tried to get a little bit of TARP funds, and there was this massive fiasco. And so I think this is this double standard. I mean, I follow this in the book. You can look at the black banks got none of those TARP funds, except Carver Bank, which was then bought by Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs got 100 cents on the dollar. So really, I mean, there's a lot that we need to be demanding of those white institutions because they owe the black community.
They owe, and it's not reparations, it's what's owed. Yeah, I guess it is reparations. It's repairing. Last question for people who have class and wealth privilege, who are serious about redistribution of wealth. Do you have advice on how to do this? Well, I think you're telling us, you just told us how to be effective, how to be, we have to put pressure. And shout out to Mackenzie Scott. Can we do that today? Because she is the wealth of the wicked stored up for the righteous. She is, you get $1 million, you get $5 million, you get 10. She is giving away all of the half of the Bezos money that she has.
I'm praying that Melinda Gates Vegas does the same with Bill's money and just gets that out there. But yeah, I mean, I think for those people in positions of privilege, I think we can, one, use our political pressure in places that we can be heard, and two, just absolutely support. I mean, do the things that we would want everyone to do to make justice happen. And I think speaking out and allowing for not hoarding those privileges, which is something that I think a lot of the 20%, because we're talking about the 1%, but there's a 20%, 30% of the top, and there's this privilege hoarding that happens. Even those middle class families who end up moving their kids or their families into these privileged hoarding situations, and to really acknowledge our, how we're all implicated in this. And we're all implicated, and that's okay to say, look, the institution that I work at, is a public university, but it's got some, skeletons in that closet. Every place that we all work at has got some stuff to deal with, and no one's pure, but to just recognize and acknowledge and not be defensive, and to put it out there, and to really just claim justice. And we can call it reparations, we can call it damages, we can call it truth and reconciliation, but it's healing for all of us.
I love all of that. And for those who have the money to do so, be intentional about how you spend it. And collectively, we have seen when Black folk in particular, who spend more money for less services, we spend more money in every sector, and we consume more media. When we decide we're not going to spend money, corporations capitulate really quickly. Coca-Cola and all these others, I don't want to name, I shouldn't do that. But every company that has had Black people say, we're not spending with you, have come to the table to do something different. So that means that we have power. When we use it, things will change. So I think we also need to be mindful of how we spend our money. Everybody watching right now, open an account at One United. Mm-hmm. Be intentional about that. Not just because you're on this, but if you are fed at all today, you have to, as a responsibility, to make sure that this bank has as much power and resources to do the things that you want it to do. And then you can hold them accountable. But we can't just sit on the sidelines complaining about why we don't have, or why we have less, or why this gap and I don't have enough money, if we're not willing to do the things that we can do to close it and to make a difference. So that's my little 2 cents. Mm-hmm. All right. So you are doing a lot. Marissa, how can people follow you besides buying your great book, The Color of Money? How do they connect with the work that you're doing, and what else are you working on?
You can, I'm on Twitter, Marissa Baradaran. The book is available everywhere, probably. I'm working on a broader book to kind of look at how the political system that we have started in that post. I mean, I learned a lot in those Nixon archives, and I think I'm trying to make a case about how that racist backlash harmed the entirety of American society, and how that the way that we use race as a weapon against certain groups ended up flinging like that dirt back onto the faces of the people who could have used some justice, which was what Martin Luther King was trying to achieve. And I follow that into private equity and corporations, and the way that we've allowed sort of this free market capitalism myth to run over our community, take the jobs, and all of the stuff that is less about racism now. Now it's just a thing that we've let loose and can't put back in the bottle.
As you're talking, and I know we have to wrap, I'm thinking, there's a bunch of quotes about how racism destroys all of us. Mm-hmm. How can we drive that message home? This is not just about Black wealth. This is not about closing the wealth gap so that Black people can get on top of some. This is about the future of America. Can you just drive that home?
I don't know what people's religious upbringing is, but, I grew up in the Christian church, and both Christian and Muslim, and there's every religion, I think, and every spiritual legacy, no matter what it is, has some sense of atoning for wrongs and lies, and I think it corrupts you and the person that you've hurt. This I think racism, like you said, the myths about racial inferiority and superiority of white people, and this fiction of whiteness anyway. I think this is this rotting festering thing in the middle of our society. And the way that, these religious traditions look at it is to say you have to acknowledge it, and you have to atone for it. Use the word, you have to sort of give it out into the universe and put it out there so that it can resolve itself. And I think this will really heal all of us. I think we are sick from this, both the anti-CRT. I mean, look at the hysteria right now about teaching American history, and tell me that is not a mental illness. I mean, the fact that these white parents are terrified that their kids are going to learn about enslavement is a really sad and sorry state for people to be in. What are you hiding your kids from? What are you shielding? And isn't it better if we just come out and acknowledge it and free our all of us from this toxic sort of lie that we're trying to uphold?
So let Juneteenth also be freedom from this toxicity.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mirza Baradaran. Color of Money is the book. Up next, our grand leaders, Kevin Coey, Terry Williams, and of course, you're going to listen to some music as they kick it to the breakout sessions. I'm Karen Hunter. I'll see you later on today.
So welcome back. We're coming to you live from 125th Street in Harlem, USA, capital of Black America, where we're celebrating Juneteenth Day, our new holiday. We barbecue and boogaloo and got a red cups out, and we're making it happen. And as Public Enemy would say, we're going to fight the power that be. So Terry, show them what's up.
Well, first of all, wasn't that fabulous? I want to thank Karen and Mirza for those gems. Karen, I love that line that we have always pulled ourselves up by our boots and our straps, because that is true. And we recognize that public policy changes are needed to close the wealth gap. At the same time, there's some things that we can do for ourselves. We need to trust each other. We need to figure out what's the one transaction that's going to close the wealth gap for our family. And that's what we're moving into now, our first breakout sessions. So you're going to choose the breakout session that's best for you. Now, let me say, if you're on mobile, you need to make sure that if you choose something and something else appears, just click the X in the top right corner, and that will go away and you will be in your session. So just in case you're on mobile and you're seeing something else appear on your screen, click your session, then click that X box in the top left corner, and it will go away. You're going to get a chance in these breakout sessions to ask questions of the presenters. Some of them have been pre-recorded so that our presenters could be live. They're going to be live in the Q&A. This is a safe place for us to ask questions, because this is for us, by us. So you get an opportunity to ask some of those questions that you may have, that other people may not understand. So again, thank you, and we're going to be here. We're live in Harlem, USA.
From Harlem, USA, baby.
And we will be back on the main stage after these breakout sessions. So again, thank you, and we'll be back.
And we'll be back.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
want to be there. It's been so long since I touched a haunting hand. I can't put my love on the line. That I hope you understand.
You know the words, sing along.
So baby, if you want me, you got to show me love.
Come on.
Words are so easy to say, but you got to show me love. I'm tired of getting caught up in those one night of. Come with your heart in your head, because my love is.
One more time, sing along, sing along.
So baby, if you want me, you got to show me love. Words are so easy to say, but you got to show me love.
I wasn't playing, we getting very black today. Black education, black excellence.
Follow me, 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 yeah, follow me. I'm hoping to see the day when my people can all relate. We must stop fighting to achieve the peace that was taught in our country. We shall all be free. Follow me. Why don't you follow me to a place where we can be free? Come with me over there. Let's get into racial hatred and let's learn to share. Can you feel it? It's in the air. Now it's time for change. Time for us to care. Follow me. Why don't you follow me to a place running. I wanna be your lover. I wanna turn you on, turn you out, all night long, make you shout. I lover, yeah. I wanna be the only one you come for. I wanna be your. I wanna thank you, Heavenly Father, for shining your light on me. You sent me someone who really loves me, and not just my body. He keeps me happy, so very happy, and loves me. I don't know how to be. It's been a long time since I had someone who loves me. I owe my thanks to thee. I know it could not happen without your love. Ooh, without your love. It took a long time for it to happen, but I knew those nights I prayed that you would send me someone who's real and not no one for play. I kept the faith and didn't worry. My nights grew longer than the days, until one day it really happened. Since you love my way, I know.
Once again, you tapped into the One Transaction Conference.
When the time is right to play your life without thinking, believe, and he'll be there. Just do it right, don't do no wrong, and keep the faith. The Lord will shine His light your way. Thank you, Father, for shining your light on me. I prayed a long time for it to happen. I did 'cause I believed. He makes me happy, so very happy. I don't know how to be.
And so my journey since I was 4 years old was based on that guidance to do something like get control of an institution, specifically a bank, to ensure that Black Americans had the organizational strength and resources to be able to protect themselves in our society. I went on from that and was fortunate enough to be a very good athlete. I played football at the University of Wisconsin. I got a undergraduate degree at the University of Wisconsin. I also ended up with an MBA from the University of Wisconsin, even though I did 1 year at Harvard Business School, 1 year at the University of Wisconsin. I ended up with the MBA. I also have a law degree from Harvard University, so I'm a JD MBA. After I left school, I went to work on Wall Street at Solomon Brothers, where I learned how to do these things that were called leveraged buyouts at the time. That was an important trend that I was able to take advantage of, and was lucky enough to buy a company, build it, and frankly, to become wealthy at a very young age, which gave me the opportunity to fulfill my lifelong dream of building institutions, specifically a bank, that could garner the political, social, and economic resources of Black America and rechannel them back into our community in a way that would both protect us and create opportunities. And this conference you're in is an example of the activism of One United Bank. One of the things that's unique about One United Bank is it's a Black-owned company that has a brand that's known from coast to coast. We literally have customers all across the country. And because of that brand, we believe that makes the company literally worth $1 billion. That's the importance of brand. It allows you to sell product and services in amounts that are greater than you would by using other resources. Your name sells the product. That just a brief background on who we are. We are the largest Black-owned bank in the country. We're going to start with you, Calvin. I want you to give us a little bit about your background and about some of the business activity that you engaged in. What's really interesting about Calvin is he's such a young man to have accomplished so much in life.
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate that introduction. Yeah, a little bit about me. I come from a military family, military background. I was born in Germany, oldest of 5 children. You know, I'm the grandson of a Montford Point Marine. So, you know, I look at my history and I see even in my bloodline, my direct descendant experience racism in this, past 50, 60 years, right, in this past lifetime. And so I take that, and knowing where I come from, that's kind of what birthed everything last year with the Blackout Coalition. I saw Ahmaud Arbery. I saw the video. It sparked a vision. It sparked a fire, culminated over the years. And so I took all that experience and information and knowledge and things I've been researching, and I took action. I did the only thing that I could do is use my voice. And I made a video, and from there, everything blew up. It's been an interesting journey. I've learned a lot. I've met a lot of people, but it's definitely given me a crash course in building a brand and a business in the digital age.
The big deal about what Calvin accomplished is he gained 1.8 million followers who were dedicated to using their economic resources to create social justice for Black America. He created a group that was in the top 20 on Facebook in terms of audience. So it really shows the power of small groups of people, the power of one to affect society today. That's one of the things that creates the opportunity for many things, opportunities for you as an entrepreneur, but also the opportunity for social justice for Indigenous people and Black Americans. So Calvin, as we move into this discussion on understanding the importance of movements and brands, talk briefly about how the movement affected you and how you created a brand as a result of the movement.
So I think what it really was more than anything is timing. I think timing is always a key factor, no matter what the business, no matter what the product. Me starting the group at the time that I did, and it's unfortunate that it has to be trauma. Sometimes it seems like jumpstarts our community, but me starting the group as I did when I saw the Ahmaud Arbery, just in divine timing, meant that when George Floyd happened, the movement was already going. The brand, the name, it was already recognizable. And somewhere along in there, shortly after that, then One United, you partnering and helping get the message, and then other people, then what happens is it began the brand, and it began to take a life of its own. Celebrities started sharing it who didn't even probably know the origin or what have you. So I think, as you said earlier, that strategic name that draws people in to pull them into action, and coupled with the timing, it just allowed us to be able to tap into the spirit of the age right now.
So that's the power of what we're talking about. Calvin was able to create a group of people, 1.8 million people, who were following him and interested in taking actions as a result of his brand. That's the power of the opportunity that we have today. Okay, so let's talk about movements. And it's one of the most important parts of understanding the challenge and the opportunity we face today is understanding the movement that we've experienced within the last year. That movement could be called the anti-racism movement. And we all saw what was happening on television. And the things to note about this movement is it's not just a movement of Black people, but it's a movement of a broad base of Americans that are tired of racism and the implications of racism on our society. And so they banded together and created an organization that's capable of change. Now, what's unique about the organization is it fulfills a long-held dream of Black American leaders, which is to organize Black America and its allies so that we could affect change in our society. Our leaders, from W.E.B. Du Bois to Martin Luther King, they all understood we needed to be organized, but the tools weren't available. The tools just became available as a result of the internet and the things that accompany the internet, like the cell phone, for us to really be organized and what I call mechanized to create change. What's different about today is because of the internet, because Black America and its allies are organized, we are able to affect change in society. That's the power of the internet. That's the power of social media. And that's what caused these criminals to be brought to justice. It's literally the business opportunity of a lifetime. This is bigger than things like the gold rush in terms of the opportunity it creates for Black America and its allies to economically integrate into society. So that's one important movement to understand, and how it affects opportunity. It allowed for the creation of things like the Bank Black movement, which was started by One United Bank, things like the Blackout Coalition, which was started by Calvin. Those things are an outgrowth of a broader movement in society called the anti-racism movement. So that's a big part of where we are today. The second big thing that happened is the pandemic. The pandemic was a beast, particularly for Black Americans. Our employment rate shot up. We lost over 50% of our businesses. But at the same time, it created a set of opportunities. It accelerated movements and trends that were already in place. I'll give you an example. The movement toward a cashless society. As a result of the pandemic, you start to ask yourself the question: what am I walking around with these dirty pieces of paper we call bills in my pocket to buy goods or services? It's inefficient, and because what we all learn more of is you can't stick money into a computer. So this broader trend toward a cashless society was exacerbated by the pandemic, creating a whole nother set of opportunities. So Calvin, tell us a little bit about how the social justice movement affected your brand.
In many ways, the social justice movement, kind of created it, birthed it. It was the energy behind it. But I know, number one, the first thing that stands out is that it gave us massive social equity, right? And a lot of people don't necessarily know that term or even know how to use it if they have it. But having social equity just means that people are paying you every day with their attention. They actually, there's many people that just follow trends on TikTok, trends on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, simply because it's done by somebody who has a particular following. And so they just go with it. It gives you a voice, it gives you a platform. And then it's just a matter of, at that point, what are you going to do with it? And so for me, it's allowed us to be able to have conversations, even with, like, right now we're talking, I wouldn't even be right here right now speaking with you if it were not for the movement. I would not have met with senators and man, all kinds of people. Like, I'm not that type of person, but I recognize that the opportunities and resources and relationships that have come over the past year that I did not have prior to was birthed from this, but also it put me on a path to saying, okay, what's the next step now? Now that we have this social equity, now that we have this visibility, not only as a movement, a social community, a company, as formulating as an actual company, the Blackout Coalition, what's the next step? And that led me to establishing an actual lobbying arm, right? We have I Am We Global, which is, we actually now have a 501c4 social welfare organization. So, but it wouldn't, if not for the Blackout Coalition, that would have never birthed into I Am We, because it was the evolution, the culmination of what was already going on. So now we have the actual, if you will, lobbying arm, which would be the Blackout Coalition, that social injustice consequence movement, right? Being able to actually economic protest, boots on the ground. And then now we have, as you said it to me before, we've armed ourselves now with an actual entity that we can move weight in the political scene.
As a result of the movement, which is one thing, the anti-racism movement, and as a result of a trend toward cashless society, which was exacerbated by the pandemic, for One United Bank, that meant that we grew our customer base at over 150%. We have positioned the company to participate in the movement and to participate in a trend that was ongoing. So that allowed us to take advantage of the opportunity that the moment presented and not to be run over by the moment. Okay, we're going to move on to another important part of building a profitable business. That's understanding the concept of a brand. What makes brands interesting is they're intangible. They actually are not a physical person, place, or thing. They're a business concept or idea that allows people to identify you as a company easily. That drives down the cost of you attaining new customers and getting your existing customers to engage in repeat sales, which is a big part of the key of building a successful enterprise. So you want to focus on brand. We all have a brand. It's really a question of how big is your brand, how many people know your brand, and how many people are attracted to brands. The brand concept is easy to understand within the context of larger businesses. A business, for example, Coca-Cola. That's over 50% of the value of that company is in that name, Coca-Cola. And so it's not about the fact that they make this dark, syrupy drink and how it tastes, or their ability to deliver these bottles of soda across America. More so than anything else, what drives the value of the company is that name, that brand. So as part of this conversation, Calvin, why don't we start with you? Why don't you talk a little bit about brand and the importance of brand in your experience?
So one of the first things that, we faced with the Blackout Coalition was the need to turn the brand into an actual business. So something as simple as selling shirts, right? When we first were going, obviously people were like, we want shirts. Is there shirts? Is there this? Is there merch? And then at that point, it's like, okay, well, I need to quickly, which I'm used to doing this over the years of, go get the EIN, the logo, whatever, all the necessary steps. But we had to quickly make sure we took the steps to form an LLC, because I wasn't about to, sell these shirts and that money be going into my personal account. So now we have a good problem. We have all of this attention, which is kind of the reverse, right? Most times people start a business first, and then the work is building the brand recognizable. But we had a brand recognizable, but no business on the back end officially. So that's one part, and that's a unique problem. Not most people, again, don't already have a recognizable brand before they start a business. But if you do, it makes things a bit easier.
Calvin raises an important part. He talks about the distinction between having a brand and building a business. Those are two distinct things. And as you're going on your journey to build a profitable business, it's important to do both well. Well, making your brand distinctive, once again, we want to use our companies and our experiences to explain the concept of the kinds of things that one could do to make a brand distinctive. For One United Bank, it's our primary product, which is our debit card, that distinguishes the bank from other banks. And frankly, it's because our cards just look better and they have much more swag. That's just the bottom line of how we do this. All of our cards are original artwork. We've commissioned an artist. We have our own artist, if you will. He doesn't belong to us, but we're big patrons of Adonis Parker, who's an internationally acclaimed artist who does the arts for all our cards. And the reason for that is the cards have a specific feel tone and have specific stories behind them that accentuate the brand of the company. So you can see the types of cards that we issue and the look and feel tone and how they all fit into the issue of social empowerment of Black Americans and other indigenous people and dealing with the challenges we face in society. Example of how to build brand using your products and services are our Harriet Tubman card. That Harriet Tubman card, like all our cards, are actually from an original painting that we commissioned. And what's interesting about it is if you look at what Harriet Tubman is doing with her hands in the card, it's actually the sign language symbol for peace and love, which is what Harriet Tubman meant to us. We thought she was the ultimate symbol of Black love, being willing to, after you're free, to go back into areas where people are slaves to free more people from being slaves. That to us was the ultimate symbol of love. However, we used the card in a different way. Several years after we did the painting, a movie came out called Black Panther, in which the same symbol, the sign language symbol, was used for something called the Wakanda salute. Now, we knew people were going to confuse the two things, but that was a marketing technique by us to draw attention to our brand, and more importantly, to draw attention to the social issue, which was very important to us, of Harriet Tubman being on the $20 bill. As you know, a people's currency, a country's currency, is reflective of their culture and their historic achievements. But yet we sit here with Black Americans having built this country, having contributed at least as much as anyone else to the building of this country, but yet we're not represented on any currency. That was significant to One United Bank. So the way we drew attention to the issue was by issuing this card, which we knew was create a firestorm of interest on Twitter as people would be confused about what we were doing, which is what our intention was. This thing worked out really well, and this card ended up on things like Saturday Night Live. It ended up on TMZ. It ended up on all kind of mainstream media where you don't ordinarily see financial products such as cards, where people were debating the merits of what we had did. Now, the effectiveness of what we did is, if you remember about a year ago when we started doing this, it's maybe about 2 years ago now, the administration had decided it was not going to put Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. We engaged in our activity. Well, guess what? One of the first things that the Biden administration did since it's been in office is to talk about putting Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. Now, did One United Bank cause the United States government to put Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill? That would probably be an overstatement. But did we have an effect on their thinking? Absolutely. Because we had tens of millions of people talking about the issue of Harriet Tubman. Now, that's an example of building brand, creating a distinctive product, presenting the product in a unique way, which affects large numbers of people, which draws interest and affiliation with your brand in a positive way. So on that note, Calvin, why don't you talk a little bit about brand to us, and what kind of distinctive features that you think can be used to build brand, and give us maybe some examples from your own personal experience or things that you see going on in society today.
Yeah, so you made a lot of good points. I'm gonna have to watch this back later and take some good notes. But what comes to mind for me, what makes a brand distinctive, is three things: the person, the people, and the product. So when I say the person, like if I use myself as an example, for the Blackout Coalition, I'm the person that presented this particular message about Blackout Day 2020 and the Blackout Coalition in general. And then the people is, how does that message or how does that person and the message they're giving resonate with the people? And then based on the response of the people to the person and the message, then you have a product then that can be given to those people. Again, in our particular situation, our product is hope. Our product is justice, is righting the wrongs of inequality in society. If you're listening to me out there, it's really this simple. It's, if you aren't the person, right? If you feel like I am not the person who is best suited to be the evangelist for my company, our message, etc., then find something, create a mascot, create something that represents your brand, communicates what your brand is about, and see if it resonates with the people. So yeah, all of these are examples of different companies, corporate entities, if you will, that have utilized this methodology. So I'm curious to know, Mr. Kevin, what tools did you use to build One United Bank?
Well, being a corporation, and I think this is the contrast between how your organization and our organization fit into the digital age, shows the range of opportunities for companies to be effective. One United Bank, being a financial institution, used a more formalized approach. So we started with a mission, a purpose for being, so that we could start to build our followers who were interested in the mission. So for us, it was extending the civil rights movement by the utilization of technology. We understood that the civil rights movement, or social justice movement as it's called today, was going to be much more expansive and much more effective. We see the world as changing, and the long legacy of systemic racism in this country breaking down once again as the result of Black America and its allies being organized and mechanized by the internet. So the first thing we did in building the company was to to give ourselves a mission, to fit into a movement through which we could build our brand. The second piece of it was the things we talked about, understanding the trends that were affecting the business so that we could develop products and services that people would want. Here again, when you're selling products and services, you have to think beyond just the mission, just the doing good part, but you actually have to have products and services that people need, and understanding trends is the way to identify those products and services. In our case, it was the movement toward a cashless society. So we are a first mover towards creating products that modern day people use for financial services. So for example, our online banking product itself and our application are state of the art, because we know as quiet as it's kept, Black Americans are very tech savvy. They want to receive money through working jobs like Uber or Lyft. They want to share money with their friends using applications like Cash App, Venmo, etc. They want innovative products like 2-day early pay. And so we sought to be an example of Black excellence, to create the products and services that people are using now, to have products not equal to much larger institutions like Bank of America, Chase, etc., but products that were better. And so that was a big part of it. So understanding the movement to give us a purpose, following a trend, and then we use more formalized tools for building the brand. We utilize data as well as any company utilize data. So we listen on the internet. So we're able to see what people are chatting about on the internet. And if they talk about, if a term comes up such as Black Bank, we're one of those companies that will then be sending you an ad immediately based on the interest that you've shown in what we do. So we understand how to identify audiences. We don't think about Black Americans as just being Black Americans. There are many subgroups in there. There are those who like Marvin Gaye. There are those who went to Black colleges. There are different age groups. And so we understand how to use audience, how to use social media tools like Facebook, Twitter, the Gram, to market products and services to those audiences. So we use very formalized, widespread techniques to reach target audiences, to sell them products and services that they need and are going to continue to need in accordance with the trend, and then having a mission and goal that binds them to the organization. It's all about the improvement of Black America, whether it's things like this, which are designed to reduce the racial wealth gap, or things like our solidarity program, which is designed to promote anti-racism in broader society. So it's a more formalized approach. The formal tactic is called creative vandalism. And Calvin, I want you to talk about creative vandalism, because I think people like yourself are very good at the utilization of the marketing concept of creative vandalism, even if you might not call it that. Maybe you can talk about what that concept brings to mind in your approach.
Yeah, so you mentioned that term creative vandalism earlier, and it really stuck out to me. I made sure I wrote that down because I started thinking to myself, that's a really grassroots concept that I feel like we already employ, or I already employ and have over the years. Like you said, whereas at a corporate level, it's more about the analytics, right? And Google Console and different tools. We don't want to give all the secrets away, but there's a lot of different things out there where you can use data. It's kind of like the NBA, how the NBA has evolved. It used to be, you know, more about just the game itself, right? And it was more of a rugged game. And, you know, you go in there in the paint and the big men beat you up. And now it's more about analytics and resting players and all of that. So with marketing and building a brand, same thing. Like you can take the corporate approach, or like me, I have not, since the first video I posted May 7th, 2020, I have not paid for one ad for anything. I don't even have on my personal Facebook page more than 1,500 friends. So this entire thing, literally, matter of fact, at the time of creating the group, I didn't even have my actual Calvin Martyr page had got deleted by accident. So if you go look at my page, I didn't create my actual page until the 18th of May. So this is purely the power of word of mouth. I feel like the tool I tapped into was really a culmination of my experiences over the years. I've been a traveling musician playing shows since 2008. I'm an entrepreneur, you know, and I even have a lot of real world experiences in the sales industry, selling all kinds of products, selling cars very successfully. So what I recognize is the power of being able to connect with people in an organic way. Right? Like that, you're not going to get somebody to go from just seeing you post your mixtape online to them actually going and downloading it, listening to it, sharing it, buying your t-shirt, showing up to a show, if in some way, shape, form, or fashion, they have not connected with you as an individual. And so I understand that power of that connection with the people, right? And the power of just literally grabbing the camera, turning it on, and being as authentic, 100% authentic as possible, and sharing from your heart. And Simon Sinek says it like this: communicate from your core, from your place of belief, and you will attract those who believe what you believe. And I feel like I'm a prime example of that happening with the Blackout Coalition.
That's right. That's right. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about the tools that you use to build your brand. So talk to us a little bit about you know, we have the contrasting approach. We have the large corporation approach, and we have the grassroots approach, and I think that covers the range of experience that people need to understand how to take advantage of this opportunity in the digital age. So talk to me a little bit about some of the tools you use.
So one of the tools is God-given, right? Just intuition. Literally, I when I talk to people, I call it the unction. Like there's this feeling I get deep in my belly. Like literally, even when I go live, that's why I'm not just always sporadically going live daily, because I don't necessarily always feel that unction where it's a necessary thing. I need to go live, and I think people fall into that pit a lot, where they feel the pressure of social media and things of that nature, and they just aimlessly create content, right? We want to be strategic. We want to be a sniper with that. So number one, intuition. But after that, there's an old saying: use the rock you got. And so for me, live video, I've used it for years. I understand it. I'm comfortable being on camera. And so that's what I used. But it's not just going live. Intentionally and strategically, I went live every single day from May 7th all the way up to Blackout Day. So 60 days straight of going live and talking about the same thing over and over and over. Now, obviously, you have to have multiple different things to talk about if you're talking about the same subject matter, which a lot of people cannot do. And then thirdly, actually creating a mobilized and engaging community that's still engaging to this day. It's crazy. Over a year removed from the original Blackout Day 2020, we still have 1.8 million people in our group, right? And it's still over 1.2 million people each week that are still active in the group, which is very rare, you know? And so all of those tools allow there to be, it's really amazing to see the engagement on just on a post or a video. The people is the power. They're the ones that make it be of value, because their ability and willingness to engage and conversate. That's strategic, obviously, right? It's the conversations we're having, you know, but it's the conversations we're having that they are interested in. And more so than that, willing to then share it on their own volition, right? That original Blackout Day 2020 video was shared over 4,000 times.
But the beauty of it is I learned so much from your comments, the concept of using live video, and that's something that we don't do. We do it, but we don't do it as effectively as we could do it. But don't you also use Facebook, Reddit, YouTube, Discord, those kind of sites to promote?
Well, definitely. So, like with the group, like you said, that's a great point there. With our group, that third point, it was that engaging community, and like you said, examples of other communities, right? Like where Reddit, like examples of communities mobilizing to get change, rather, right? Reddit they were able to make a huge push, and we saw GameStop and AMC. That was a phenomenon because of a actual social group. You see on TikTok certain movements and trends happen from a social group, Instagram, all of these different things. But you see where people create pockets of their own following and community. Even right now, great example, somebody who I follow, Gary Vee, he's a huge marketer and stuff. He just launched a thing. NFTs is a huge thing, right? And he created this whole community around NFTs, and he's engaging his own following behind a movement that he likes. But one that is more prevalent to our fight, right, for social justice, we just recently saw the Asian American and Pacific Islanders legislation get passed directly from social movement, literally from people facing an issue in society, taking to social media, a hashtag campaign, and that culminated in legislation. And I think this overall captures the spirit of movements like the Montgomery bus boycott, like the civil rights movement in and of itself.
Yes. And what we're trying to demonstrate is the broad range of techniques that one could do to build brand over the internet. And we're talking about it a lot within the context of the social justice movement, but these are the same techniques you use to sell products and services. For One United Bank, it's a more formal process. We have a social media marketing team, which every day is posting about current social issues that affect Black America. We also do use public relation techniques to get to be on television, programs, to be on radio programs. So public relations is a big part of what we do. So we've been able to be on all forms of media, from things like Forbes and Fortune to the Wall Street Journal to more local Black-oriented media. Those are the techniques that one can use to build brand. We also get influencers to carry our cars. They carry our cars just because they look good and they want to be a part of helping Black America to grow and develop. So we're able to attract influencers, often with no cost to the organization. So what you see with Calvin and Kevin, the One United Bank and the Blackout Coalition, the range of tools and techniques that one can use to build brand, from informal techniques. Here again, we talked about creative vandalism on both a grassroots level and a corporate level. We talked about the utilization of public relations. We talked about the use of organization apps that allow you to form groups and communicate to groups. Those are the tools you need to build your brand. Okay, Calvin, let's hit on this issue of how do you maintain brand loyalty. We understand now the importance of brand. It allows you to attract customers more cheap, and it allows you to get your existing customers to engage in repeat purchases, which is a key part of profitability. Let's talk about some of the things that make a consumer loyal to your brand.
The first thing off top, and these kind of go hand in hand, are maybe one of the same thing, but customer service and communication. Just the experience, not only whether they're coming into your physical store to buy some clothes or your restaurant to sit down and have a meal, or even virtually, most people, their experience right now is e-commerce, right? Whatever the context, when people buy a product from you, a service from you, they're expecting a certain level of treatment, right? They want to be handled with care. And this is honestly, if you're talking about building your business, your brand, this is the number one thing, because one person will come and have a good experience and they may tell one or two friends, but you can guarantee if someone has a bad experience with your business, they're going to go tell 5, 10, 15, anybody who will listen about how they feel about the Blackout Coalition or how they feel about One United Bank. They're going to tell. So this is huge. And a lot of times, the reason why I say customer service and communication, a lot of times the issue, I've experienced a lot of different scenarios. Even last year, prime example, there was a shortage with shirts because of COVID. And so a lot of the shirts that we were sending out last year, the fulfiller that we had, there was a delay. So obviously we had to be on the front end of that, of explaining. So all of these things are very important, right? Because again, people will tell more people about their bad experience than they will their good experience. So just a little bit of communication goes a long way in dealing with these issues, right? And honestly, it's only 1% to 2% of your whole thing, but that 1% to 2% of individuals who had a bad experience can derail everything. So customer service and communication, to me, that's top of the list.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And for us, we think it's important to continue to innovate, to really offer the consumer high quality creative products that meet their needs. For example, we had a number of customers that, well, the way I phrase it, that live on a 14-day cash cycle. In other words, they live from paycheck to paycheck, and they have to be very conscious of how they use their money. So we added a feature called 2-day early pay, which allows a person to get their paycheck 2 days early. So it's the difference between getting your paycheck on Wednesday and getting your paycheck on Friday. And for lots of people, that's a big deal. And it's the kind of thing that makes them loyal to you because you're helping them to fulfill their life needs. So we have to build companies that continue to evolve, that continue to become better over time. Another thing we did is we engaged the customers and to get them to become part of your company, to give them ways, for example, that they can make money by selling your products. Referral services are a big deal, and people are always interested in new ways to make money. And if you can make them part of your mission and to financially benefit, or in our case, not only did we provide money, but as you can see, here's the examples of the innovative kind of awards and gifts that we offer to our customers for both utilizing the product as well as bringing in new consumers. So these types of activity are what allow you to grow with your customer. But as Black Americans, see, one of the things that we've always had that we need to bring more to the world of business is swag. We are cultural leaders worldwide. It's our ability to affect social trends and drives customers that makes us unique as a people. For example, our solidarity card. This is our latest card. And what I'll say to you, if you can find a flyer card than our card, get it. Just straight up on the looks, the style, the creativity of the thing. It's an example of the kind of things you can do. And we'll put our card up against anybody on services or how it looks. And so it's these types of things that we have to continue to do as a people. We have to bring the same things that we bring to music, the same thing we bring to sports, the same things that we bring to fashion. We have to bring all those things to business. And one of the things that I got to tell you, Calvin, what's really exciting about talking to you, that there's a lyric in a song that says, "We don't need no guitar or no fancy clothes. And the point of it is, look, you make do with what you have. Start where you start, put it where the goats can get it, to use another old country saying. And again, and you'll be able to attract people. You'll be able to attract the following, and that's all these words are about. Is the fancy words to talk about the importance of building a following. And so that's the kinds of things that are very important to building customer loyalty. And as Calvin said, customer service is a big deal. I know at One United Bank, we just added artificial intelligence to our customer service department because that's how important customer service is. And we have to start to utilize, we have to evolve in techniques like artificial intelligence. That artificial intelligence is going to be a key driver of future business opportunities. And we need to understand it. And number one, don't be mystified by it. It's not that big a deal. It's not all that complicated. It's just getting computers to do things that people would have done otherwise. And we have to participate. We have to get up, make artificial intelligence a part of our companies, the way we sell products, the way we identify customers. And that's the new wave of where business is going. It's part of the new wave of where business is going, and we have to be effective participants. Okay, we're moving on to one of the most important lessons that we hope to be able to convey to you today. It's central to building any business in the digital age. We entitled it, Do You Own You? And what that's about is understanding the importance of digital real estate and making sure that you have ownership of your digital real estate so you can effectively build your business. If you don't own your digital real estate, it's like not owning your house. It's not yours, and you shouldn't build on real estate that you don't own. So Calvin, why don't you elaborate a little bit on the importance of the whole concept of controlling your domain and controlling your trademarks?
Yes, I love this topic. To answer your question, yes, I own me. Well, I'll say technically, I actually operate in trust, so all my assets and things are in my trust name. But technically, I'm the trustee of my trust, right? But when you talk about digitally, yes, I own CalvinMartyr.com and all the different little sub ones of that, .net, whatever. YKOG Media, which was one of my media companies I've had for the last 5 or 6 years. Favor Man Global, of course, the Blackout Coalition. I Am We Global, which is our nonprofit now. Shameless plug to my wife, Jade Natural Essentials. I help her with the operations on things of that nature. And of course, I have martyrsmastermind.com, which is like my podcast. And I have an online university, Mastermind University. And all of these things have their own URL, their own EIN number, their own logo. But all of these things, right, I had to first take the time to research the name, right? That's where it starts. Is this name something I can use? I actually learned that the hard way, actually. Before I had YKOG Media, I had a company name of Salt Society, Salt Life Media, actually. I named it Salt Life Media. And I didn't do my necessary research, and I ended up getting a cease and desist letter. There's a company based out of Florida that's a surfboard company called Salt Life. Well, because of so I ended up having this whole momentum I had built. Thankfully, it hadn't been, too far into it, maybe, 5-10 years, and now you built this whole empire. But the name is important. Once you find out the name, then you need to quickly get an EIN number, with that name. I got a graphics guy I've been working with for 12 years. I got Paul Santos on the line. Like, if I need anything, he already knows. I've paid him for graphics over the years that I still haven't even used yet, but it was because it was an idea. And the digital real estate, without going too deep, because I know we're going to talk about it, but there's no more URLs. Like, once the name is used, you can't use it anymore. And I know people think of the internet as this infinite never-ending space, but eventually there will be no more combinations of words you can use for particular ideas, right? I mean, it'll keep going. The world will keep evolving some way, somehow. But as we talked about, as the world goes digital, you need to be digital. You need to have a digital location, which we call digital real estate, which can bring you digital residual, right? And if we use that term real estate, for years, for centuries, physical real estate was the number one wealth building tool. The future, the number one wealth building tool will be digital real estate. It's literally, think of yourself as having like a red door property. Free and clear, it's paid off. All you got to do is worry about the taxes. That's how an online website is. All you got to worry about is that monthly fee to keep that hosting up, right? Whatever that fee is, you might be paying it annually. And now you got a paid off website where if you drive traffic, renters to your location who pay you to be on your space, right? Or are buying a product from you, now you can make money in your sleep and then do that 10, 20, 30, 40 times. And now you'll be a millionaire, right? It's building an online presence that can bring you digital residual. And we'll talk about how that leads to generational wealth, because these are assets now. We're creating digital assets. I don't know. This is so dear to me. Like this whole concept of having an online representation of your business. If nobody knows you or knows about you, you do not exist. Unfortunately, it's a lot of business owners that don't get this. They're stuck in the analog. They're stuck in the old way, and you have to evolve and get into the stream of where everybody is, because 90% of all internet traffic, 90% is on a mobile phone. And over 80% of the whole global population, they're on social media. They're looking. And now with the pandemic, they want to buy. They are literally sitting around, nothing to do but consume content and spend money and get it delivered to their home. You need to have digital real estate.
As we bring it into this session, I want you to talk about the importance of digital real estate in a digital age.
Digital real estate is so vital to this whole building of generational wealth. And I know on one hand, for me as a father, I understand everything that I'm building right now in the way I'm training and teaching my children. I'm not training them to work jobs. I'm already talking to my son. My oldest is 13, and I'm already talking to him about my goal is to have him be a millionaire by 21. And he has the opportunity to do that. Whereas when I was 13, the internet was in its infancy. I'm glad you said about how the internet is young, right? I like to tell people I'm literally the age of the internet, right? In 1987, the military created the intranet. And then in 89, CERN gave us the internet in 1989. And that's the same year we got the cell phone and the Berlin Wall came down. So literally the last, I'll be 32 in July, the last 32 years, like think how short that is. We went from inception of internet to now where we have the internet. In the last recent 5 or 6 years, phenomenons like retail investing have been able to happen because of the internet. So something that powerful, if you have no representation in the marketplace, if something that powerful and revolutionary in one lifetime, literally, then you're not serious about your business and you're not serious about building something that you can pass on. Because truth be told, you and your children and your children's children are going to work to build someone's brand. They will build somebody's empire. Will it be an empire that has your last name attached to it and a brand that you've built? Or will they be working for someone else? It's plain, and it's not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's an inevitability. That's the point. And we're saying if you're here right now and you're at this conference and you're listening to this segment, you clearly have some desire to build generational wealth, to be an entrepreneur, to be a business owner. And so it has to start with a mindset first yourself, of why am I building this? Who am I building this for? And then communicating that to those individuals so they understand, so that they can be groomed building for.
That's right. And I want to conclude. We're talking about the digital age, and what that's about is it's about new ways of communicating. That's all the digital age is about. We develop different ways of communicating faster, things other than voice and other than person-to-person communication. We have machines that can in fact communicate with each other. And in that environment where machines are communicating with each other, than you've ever needed before in order to be successful in society. You have the ability to target groups of people who are interested in your products and services cheaply. And therein lies the opportunity for growth and development for us as a people. And it also provides the foundation for us to continue to not just survive in American society, but thrive, because now we're organized. Now we're mechanized. We have the tools to introduce and control social change. So in many ways, despite the pandemic and the challenges that it's caused, and there have been many, it's a complete disaster. But like so many difficult things that we've had to face as a people, we shall overcome. We shall take advantage of this opportunity. We shall take advantage of the challenges that life has brought us, and we will succeed as a people. So thank you very much. One United Bank appreciates your time and attention, and we continue to be here for you because you're here for us. Thank you.